Algebra final review, frame 10, last one. Pressure's on. If you're bowling a 300 game, you have 10 perfect strikes. Frame 10 is all about solve by graphing. Okay, for 3 of our 4 methods where we solve quadratics, we have to have them equal to 0. Same thing for graphing.
Dave Estes, please dial extension 1111. Dave Estes.
In graphing, pardon the interruption, in graphing we want to know where does this function equal 0. Well, this function equals 0. Here's the function values. Here's 0 right at the x-axis. We know that y equals 0. We're looking for what does x equal. X equals -4 when the graph equals 0. What else does it equal? It also equals -2. Often you have 2 answers when you solve by graphing. Well, when you solve any quadratics, you often have 2 answers. But sometimes you don't have any answers because it never even made it. The graph went down, swooped around the vertex, and went right back up and never touched the x-axis. Over here, the vertex happens to actually be the answer. The vertex is over here at 2. It goes up, hits the vertex, comes right back down. Where does the graph hit the x-axis? At x equals 2. That's one way to write your answers. You could also write them as points, as coordinates, because this point is at left 4, up 0. Left 2, up 0. This one doesn't have any points. This one is exactly at 2, 0. Solve by factoring is our last method. If you are going to solve by factoring, you need to first be able to factor. Factoring meaning you're going to set it up into 2 parentheses. Because it's a trinomial, split the x squared and do x times x. We're going to unfoil this. We need 2 numbers that multiply to make 15. It's either 1 and 15 or 3 and 5. I'm going to go with 3 and 5. They have to add to be -8. -3 plus -5 is -8. So far you've only factored. You must also solve by factoring. We again want this to equal 0. We need an answer to when does x have a value that turns our function into 0. Well, this factor could be 0. X minus 3 could be 0. If we want that factor to equal 0, then we better make the x a 3. 3 minus 3 is 0. If we want this factor to equal 0, then we better make sure that the x is 5, because 5 minus 5 is 0. It's not asking us just to factor, but to actually solve by factoring. How do you know if you're right? You're taking a final, you want to ace it, put a 3 in its place. 3 squared minus 8 times 3. 9 minus 24 is -15. -15 plus 15 is 0. Plug the 5 in, do the same. Over here, we can't solve this by factoring. Not until it equals 0. We need to add 40 to both sides. X squared plus 14x plus 40 equals 0. Once it equals 0, then you can factor. Break it up into x times x. You've got positives here, which means either 2 positives or 2 negatives. We know it's 2 positives. Lots of factors of 40. 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 4 and 10, 5 and 8. Let's go with 4 and 10. 4 times 10 is 14, or 4 times 10 is 40. 4 plus 10 is 14. But again, I need to solve this. That factor has to equal 0, because 0 times anything would be 0. How do I make that factor equal 0? Make it -4. How do I make this factor equal 0? Make it -10. If you're not sure, you could actually show the work. X plus 4 equals 0. How does x plus 4 equal 0? By subtracting 4 from both sides. You get x equals— so either change the sign in this instance where you don't have a complicated factor, and those are your two answers. If you want to know if they're right, plug them back in. Alright, there's your 10 frames. If you got all strikes so far, you're going to need to bowl frame or worksheet 10 and 11 to go for that 300 game. Good luck on your final.